Hi, it's Tim Hagan from Progress Coaching and a youth sports coach of 30 plus years on and off for boys volleyball. And I would tell you when I started playing, which was over 40 to 45 years ago, and then I got into coaching when I was 18, a freshman in college, I coached my first boys volleyball team. And certainly times have changed. And when we look at coaching and we look at some of the different things that go on with coaching, the coaches have changed. The environment has changed. The players have changed. The ability of the players has changed. And so before we do a deep dive into, coaching for coaches, in terms of coachability, parents, coachability for their kids, and then the players and the kids and the value of coachability for them, what is coachability? Coachability is about a person. We won't even call it a player just yet. Somebody who goes in and asks for feedback and smiles and says, thanks. Now, some of you might be saying, well, wait a minute. What if you disagree with the feedback? Feedback has never been delivered with the objective of 100% accuracy. The goal of feedback is to give someone feedback so they have an opportunity to improve. Our goal of giving the feedback should also be to give it so someone receives it well. So when and how do we do that? And what's the value of coachability? So let's fast forward. Let's go way past youth sports. And let's talk about today's employee. Think about today's employee. 85% of people have been known to significantly, through studies, lack self-awareness. 70 to 71% of people in the workplace today are actively disengaged or neutral. Only 19 to 20% are positively engaged. The opportunity to differentiate yourself has never been greater. Now, how do we facilitate that? Leaders, the Gallup organization reports that when we engage with people's strengths first, they engage 8 times more than when we lead with constructive feedback. So here's the funny thing. We are all creatures of habit. So when you think about a creature of habit, what do? Bob, I need to see my office right away. The employee's first response is what? It's usually, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? In 32 years of running my company, I've never had somebody say something positive. It's always, uh-oh, I must be in trouble, because we've conditioned that behavior. So how does this transform to youth sports? Quite frankly, it's the reverse. Youth sports transforms to the workplace. So let me just talk to the coaches. When I think about coaching, I always go back to 2 fundamental premises: is facilitating that coachability as a craft. So my players, and these are just suggestions, they're not things that you're doing right or wrong. They're not things you have to do, but these are things that I instilled in my players. You have to get feedback from a teammate once a week. And the question is, what are 2 things I'm doing well? And what's the one area where you feel like I can raise my game? I stay away from the words constructive feedback. And there's always that one player raises their hand and goes, what if I hear something I don't like? I go, you're going to smile and say thanks, because you have to ask yourself, are you pushing teammates away or are you pulling them in closer by your reaction? So let me introduce you to a term that I introduced to my players, I introduced to my clients, I introduced to leaders, I introduced to coaches, and that is emotional interpretation. So if you are to say, you look terrible in that blue shirt, it doesn't calm me down, it gets my blood pressure up. And we teach something called RIRE. React, interpret, articulate, reflect. We never get to reflection. So when I react, I feel, geez, I look great in this blue shirt. My interpretation, you're being a jerk. My articulation is I tell 3 other people who tell 4 other people. Sound familiar with youth sports? When somebody doesn't play, what happens? The player tells the parents. The parents are upset. The parents talk to the other parents. The other player, the kid, actually tells 4 other players. And that starts to form an opinion of the coach. Oh, by the way, the player forgot to tell his parents and the fellow players, I was late for practice twice. And so we look for things in absolute terms, right or wrong. It's not the world we live in. So when you look at, for coaches, I always think playing time is to encourage positive feedback. I always view practice time is where we get the repetitions and the constructive element of coaching. And I have a young lady right now, 18 years old, about to coach her first boys volleyball team as a freshman in college. Kid 4 years younger than her. She said, do you have any suggestions? I said, yeah. Always remember when you yell across that court, it's within earshot of that kid's parent. I'm not saying to avoid the tough conversation. I'm just saying that's when you praise, because then they have yet less to argue about. They have less to complain about. And so for coaches, it's tough, right? And then when I look at parents, when we see our kid not play, it's tough. I want to plant a seed with you. The greatest gift your kid can get is being a teammate, as corny as that sounds. It is also the ability to struggle. If you have not, as a parent, read this book, get the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. Stands for Guts, Resilience, Intensity, Tenacity. The greatest gift you can have for your kid is their ability to struggle and overcome that struggle. Change and challenge is tough. So grit, Angela Duckworth's research reports, the number one attribute of someone who's successful is someone who's shown passion and perseverance over a period of time where there's change and challenge. She did a study at McKinsey. She did it in the Chicago school districts, and grit was the number one determinant of someone's future success. So when we go to the coach and say, why is my kid not playing? Most of the time, parents are not asking that question. They're asking, is he going to play more? And I kind of want to position you to be a little uncomfortable so my kid gets some more playing time. You're doing your kid a disservice. In the moment, it feels so good. So I'm famous where I coach for these. I have earbuds. And people would always say, why do you wear earbuds when you coach? And I said, when my kid played freshman basketball, there was about 17 kids on the team. There was a cut, but they kept 17 kids. I knew he wasn't going to play much. My kid was a great shooter, but below average athlete. I knew his days were numbered, and I could hear the parents yelling. I could hear the parents yelling at other people's kids to get their kids out of the game. And I'm like, this is nuts. I never had that when I grew up playing. And you hear the horror stories of refs being physically attacked, and we're at an all-time low with officials in this country. And then I look at the opportunity that parents have to go watch their kids and enjoy it. And they're fighting in the stands and they're yelling at the coaches and the refs. And I share this with parents all the time. When you yell at an official, and let's say an official missed a call, and they will, by the way, you're teaching your kid, and everyone, when I first say it, argues with me. You're teaching your kid to undermine authority figures. Something went wrong against you, son or daughter. I'm going to scream for you. It's not you. Don't overcome anything. It's the ref's fault. So what happens? And I see it in the workplace all the time. People enter the workforce, and I just had a young guy at a credit union say to me, well, my boss isn't a very good boss. I said, that's too bad. I said, so what's a good boss? He went on to tell me 5 things that the boss shouldn't do or has done that they shouldn't do. And I said, it's interesting. What was my question? Well, you wanted to know my issues with my boss. I said, no. Remember emotional interpretation? I said, what is the good boss? What should a boss do when there's conflict between 2 people? What should a boss do when the numbers aren't where they need to be and he or she's getting pressure from their boss? This kid looked at me dismayed. I said, you just said he's not a good boss. What is your criteria? Well, I don't know. I said, okay. He said, maybe I shouldn't have said something. I said, think about this. Would you say this directly to your boss? He said, well, no. I said, have you shared this with anybody else? I think I know the answer. Well, yeah, some of us have talked. I said, oh, okay. So you start rumors? What do you mean I start rumors? I said, you think your coworkers are going to represent your voice better than you? And have you given consideration or thought to how the boss would feel knowing that the team is talking behind his or her back? He said, no, obviously it's a good point. I shouldn't do it. And these are learned behaviors. So we as parents, one of the best things that we can do is go up to one of our kids' teammates who maybe even played more, and praise them in front of their parents, in front of your kid. That will facilitate the groundwork for teamwork and coachability. Now, players, the greatest gift you can have is being a teammate. If there's a kid on the court and you're not on the court, they're not going to volunteer to come off that court to make the player feel better. Players have to learn we versus me. And we had a slogan at our program. We stands for wonderful experience. Me stands for my ego. You have a choice every single day the way you behave. And I used to tell my son when he played freshman basketball, you're going to have a choice. The coach will look down at the bench and see one of two things very high level. He'll see this with people putting their feet out in front of him, leaning back, dismayed, or a kid leaning forward and yelling for his teammates. Which kid would you put in? So ironically, by the end of freshman year, I go to my son's last games. I went to every game. He only played half the games. I went to every game. And I had a parent literally say, why do you come to every game? Liam doesn't play as much as the other kids. I said, Liam's not the team. And I have a great silhouette that I always used to share on Facebook. And it was what a parent sees, my kid. And then what a coach sees, my team. And it would be a silhouette of 5 kids versus 1 kid. And I said, I have to teach my son. Was it fun? No. Did I get upset? Sure I did. It was tough to watch your kid just sit there. But what I had to teach him was it's not about you. And so the last 2 games, Joe, now a principal at an area high school, came to me and said, I told Liam he can play as much as he wants the last 2 games. Now, if you're a parent, I hope you hear this. If you're a player, I hope you hear this. He said, you and your wife are the only ones not to complain or send me an email during the season. And he is always working hard. He never gripes. He never complains. And this is where a coach did a really good job. And he rewarded coachability. Was Liam the best kid on that team that should be playing all the time? Nope. I was blessed with an average athlete for a son. I didn't have high expectations. Quite frankly, I'm not even making a joke. That made life a little bit easier. So what I go back to is when you think about coachability, it's about thinking about we, not me. It's about praising others who are playing. It's about supporting the coach who has to corral 12, maybe 15 players to operate as one unit. Not fun. And then I think about parents. The greatest gift you can give your kid is the mindset to develop grit, to fight through the struggle. And I remember when I watched my son play basketball, favorite sport for him. And I kept saying to my wife, he's a kinetic kid. What's a kinetic kid? I said, when you give Liam emotion, he can repeat it. I said, he'd be a great volleyball setter. He would pick up setting right away. I should get him into golf. So I tell him, Liam, you should golf. He said, it's the most boring sport in the world. My kid's a scratch golfer now. Because he found his thing. How did he find his thing? Through the struggles of other sports. He got cut from freshman baseball. And people say, what'd you say to the coach? I said, I've never said a thing to Jack. I still go to Milwaukee Brewer baseball games with Jack Freeze. He cut my kid freshman year. Liam came out JV year, sophomore year, played 2 more years of JV baseball. And then senior year goes, I'm not good enough. What did he cultivate? Self-awareness. 85% of people lack self-awareness. So the challenge we have, everybody, is coaches, as parents, as players, become coachable. Let your kids get coached. Let them struggle. It stinks. It's horrible to watch. Let me leave you with this. One of the greatest moments I think I've had in my coaching career is our last match in the Wisconsin Volleyball State Tournament. We were beating a team of probably about 60-year history. We're in our 5th year. We were beating them. We won the conference title. We were ranked in state. This is the second time I've started a high school program where we did really well. And I'm really proud of what we accomplished. And the athletic director was sitting with the superintendent. And we had a kind of this gimmicky thing we did. We wore sandals. It'd be the middle of winter. It'd be 20 below. We wore Hawaiian shirts. And I remember the superintendent said to the athletic director, he goes, John, look at our coach, referencing me. He goes, he's not even dressed professional. And look at his bench. It's like Animal House. And John goes, let me tell you, I don't have parent complaints. The reason he wears the Hawaiian clothes is because the first 2 years, it was a gimmick he came up with to distract from what they were going to do. I said, what'd they do? And he goes, lose. He took a job knowing they're going to lose to build the program. Our last 2 years, we were 29-7 and 27-6. And he said, you see all those kids on the bench who are jumping around, like you say, like Animal House? They're not going to play tonight. He never has a match that doesn't show that energy. And by the way, he doesn't let kids stay on the team with a B, without a B average, a 3.0 or higher. And he said, and these kids lead their own timeouts. They have to mentor a freshman. Now, I don't say this to impress you. Are there mistakes I made? Oh my gosh, yes. Did I watch my kids struggle in youth sports and get upset with the coach? Like, what is he doing? Of course I did. Yet if we can stay calm, so remember Ryer? React, interpret, articulate, reflect. Start with reflection. Don't approach the coach. If your kid didn't play, say to he or she, let's go out for lunch. Let's celebrate the team's win. Who do you think played well? Get them looking at the team differently. Because when I'm thinking about me and me isn't playing, it's tough. The greatest gift we can give is coachability, because when it enters into the high school, the college, and the post-college years, you will be, as a coachable person, in the top 20% of the workforce day one. Let us know your thoughts.